And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara Podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is the Reverend Catherine Chapey, Ordained InterSpiritual Minister and Level 2 QHHT Hypnotist. Her experiences includes NDEs, OBEs, shared death experiences, ET contact, and more. Catherine, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for having me today. I really look forward to our talk.
Well, we are excited to have you, Catherine, and you've had a long life of spiritual activity. So I guess we should just start at the beginning and go from there.
Okay. All right. Well, where my story started was actually in the very beginning. And I didn't even realize this until probably the last couple of years, maybe even a little longer than that. But I was born very premature, and I was about 2 months premature. And back then, that was in the 60s, they believed that the babies that were premature should not be held. So I spent the first month of my life in an incubator where nobody could hold me. And even my mother could not hold me.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it really is. And at that time, JFK, John F. Kennedy's son was born shortly after me. And he had passed away, and he was about 6 weeks premature. So it was like a very, that's how they just didn't really know how to really properly care for the preemies until after that. They realized that bonding is so important to their growth and their healing and everything else. But so the reason I bring that up is because I found out later through my own spiritual journey and connecting in with my guides and my team was that I was never alone during that time. I was actually out of my body mostly. I was, with my spirit family. And so it wasn't like I was just in that incubator by myself. And I know that to be true because I've had so many experiences with my team, my spiritual team. And they're just a beautiful team of beings. But later, a few things happened to me when I was a kid where I almost died. And I won't go into all of them, but I'll just tell a couple of quick stories. My brother fed me a whole bottle of baby aspirin when I was 1 and he was 2.
Wow.
And they found me after he fed me all those little orange, those little orange ones. I guess he thought they were candy. But I jokingly say my brother tried to kill me when I was 1 and he was 2. And yeah, they had to rush me to the hospital and have my stomach pumped. And then I remember being in a bathtub with ice water when I was about 2 years old because my fever was 107 and just screaming. So I had so many experiences where I look back and I say I should have died. I have a list of like 14 different things that happened to me as a kid. And it's like miracles that I did not, I didn't die. So, and other things happened to me when I was a kid, where I would wake up frozen in my bed. So, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it's like
Sleep paralysis?
yeah, but it feels like something is holding you down, like you can't move a muscle. All you can do is move your eyes. And I was very young when this happened, and I felt a presence next to me, and it felt like a male menacing presence. And I was raised in a religious upbringing, a Catholic upbringing. And from a very young age, we were told about hell and the devil. And and if we were bad, we would go to hell,
Mhm.
and that if we didn't go to church every Sunday, we would go to hell. So I had that real fear about the devil and hell and, so I thought the devil lived under my bed. And so when I was a kid, I would not put my foot on the floor. I would stand on the edge of my bed and jump because I thought the devil lived under my bed and was just ready to grab me and pull me down under. So But I had a lot of those frozen experiences, and I thought it was the devil that was there. So I was really scared, and I couldn't move until I would make this sound. And as soon as I would make that little sound, it would release me. And then when I got a little bit older, I started to question a lot of what I was being told, because I remember, I always just knew that God was love, and that it didn't make any sense to me that God would only choose certain people that could go, and be with God after they died, even though he made God, or he or she, God made everybody, right? Only certain people would be able to be with God. Everybody else was going to hell. That didn't make sense. So, and it really solidified for me at a young age. A couple things went on. I had my little prayer book when I made my first communion, and I remember I would say these little prayers. I cut out the prayer book, and I made my own little prayer book. I took all of the non-dogmatic prayers, and I made my own little prayer book. And then, so when I would say those prayers, I would just feel this connection to Mother Mary and Jesus right away. Like they heard me. And then whatever I was going through, like if I was sad or worried, it would just leave. And I remember, that connection. And then I started to question about what I was being taught. So I would, one day, well, we had these beautiful neighbors, and they were Jewish. And we would go over their house because they had kids our age, and we spent a lot of time over there. And their family was just beautiful. They just welcomed us like we were family. We were part of their family when we were there. And that love that they gave us, and I remember one day I went home, and I was concerned, and I said to my mother, I said, without using their names, are they going to hell because they're Jewish and they're not Catholic? They don't go to church. And my mother, being who she was, said, yes. So, so, you know, anyway, at the time, I knew that was not the case. I said, that just didn't make sense. So just as a young kid, I was questioning a lot of things. So then fast forward, I was an adult. My kids were older. Um, and I was in a very male-dominated field for many years. And there were these guys on the job who had pushed this man out of a leadership position. Okay. They scapegoated him, and they pushed him out of his job. And this man had kids in college, and kids that were graduating college, getting married. So he was a little older than me, nice guy. And he got really depressed. And I don't know the whole backstory, but he was just, he ended up committing suicide. It was terrible. Um, and the way he committed suicide was just, it was beyond belief. So right after that, he came to me in a dream, and he was beaming. He was so happy. And he wanted me to know that he was fine, like not to worry about him. And I just remember I was like, oh my God, thank you for showing me you're okay. And and then he was just so happy. And I remember being so happy about seeing him. It was shortly after his memorial service. And I went into work, and we had a report in this office, and all these guys were there, and I just blurted out, oh, I had a dream about our coworker, and he was so happy, thinking for a moment that they would be happy. And then one of the guys said, oh, you mean, and then he described the way he died in a very, horrible way. And they all laughed. And I was disgusted. I was horrified and disgusted. So anyway, shortly after that, I was at a diner. I was in the parking lot, and I was telling that story to somebody in the parking lot after we were leaving the diner. And we were talking. And as I was telling the story about these guys and how, they said that terrible thing about him, he walked right in front of me. Okay. As clear as you and I looked, in every way, like a physical being. And I kept saying to the person I was talking to, and oh my God, there he wait a minute, there he was 10 to 15 feet away from me. And he was walking across the parking lot, and kind of there were other people around him. And that's why I was like, he looks as real as every one of them. And I kept saying, and wait a minute, how is that possible that he passed away, but there he is? And he looked over at me and looked right at me as if to say, yeah, I know what's going on. I know what those guys are, that they're so two-faced and everything else. So after that, I started to question like a lot of my mediumship connections, because I was having a lot of contact with the spirit world. I would be talking about my grandfather. I could smell his cigar. Nobody around me was smoking a cigar, different things like that, dreams of visitations of, of people that had passed. So, excuse me, synchronistically, I was also feeling like I wanted to have like a community of people, or find a community of people that were spiritual, but not religious. I didn't want the dogmas of religion. And so I started to look online, and I just Googled spiritual communities or spiritual, spiritual communities in my area. And a spiritualist church came up, right? So I was like, oh, spiritualist church. I never heard of that before. I didn't even know there was such a thing, right? The same day that I Googled it and spiritualism came up, a friend of mine called, and she goes, oh, Catherine, she goes, I kept thinking of you last Sunday. I went to this spiritualist church, and it's like not too far from where you live, and da da da, or, you would really love it. And, they're all about the golden rule. There's no dogma. And they have mediums that, connect in with spirit, and they give you messages from the spirit world. And she said, and they're all about God, and and love, that God is love, and about that we are all equal. So there are female um, spiritualist ministers, and there are male spiritualist ministers. This is not a male dominated, patriarchy religion. And I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. And being that it was so synchronistic, I ended up going there the following Sunday. So when I went there, I was sitting all the way in the back. It was crowded, and they had a visiting medium that was there. And she said, she couldn't see me. She was like, oh, I can't see. I don't have my glasses on. But the lady all the way in the back with the pink fuchsia shirt on, can I come to you with a message? And I said, yes. And so she started to give me a message from my grandfather, who had passed just recently. And she described our last moments together. She described him, and his personality. And then she said to me, your grandfather says he wants you to know, he says, don't pray to me, right? And I'm like, at first I'm like, what is he talking about? And then I realized, oh my God, he wants me to pray to God, because the week before I was talking to my grandfather in my head, and I was asking him, like, Grandpa, you have to help me with my child. I had a child who was having a lot of challenges, and I had been for years really, really trying everything I could to help her and get resources for her so that she could, we could move forward with what she was dealing with. But it was like dead end after dead end. And so I had been asking my grandfather, thinking, well, he's in spirit now. He can see the bigger picture. Maybe he can help me out. But he wanted me to know, don't pray to me, pray to God. So that's what I started to do. I started to pray to God. And I would still communicate with my grandfather, and because he was part of my spirit team. And I started to pray to God and ask for help with my child. And all types of synchronicities happen. And my grandfather would give me messages saying, yes, it's going to be okay. Doors are going to open. Everything is going to work out. You're going to see. And boom, I'm telling you, it was like miracle after miracle, things I couldn't even imagine that could be possible, like fell into our lap and opened up. It was like the sea had parted, you know? I met people that at the right time, at the right place, and everything really, really worked out beautifully in so many ways for her after that. And so that really taught me that, you know, God, the spirit world, they want to help us, and we have to ask. We really have to ask, you know? And so once we start to ask and connect in with them. So during that time, I started to go to regular unfoldment circles at the Spiritualist Church. And that was where we would sit in circle once a week, developing mediums. And we would, you know, learn to open up our consciousness and expand consciousness to connect in with the spirit world, and with always with the intention to be able to communicate with spirit, to bring messages for people that were healing and helpful, right? So I had this awesome mediumship teacher. He was also a spiritualist minister, and he would, you know, he would do these guided meditations. And at the time, I had this monkey mind. I was all over the place. I didn't think I'd be able to meditate because my mind was always interfering. But with these guided meditations that he would take us on, I found that it was easier to be able to follow along and to focus. So little by little, we started to ask to meet our spirit guides. And the first time I saw my spirit guide, I was in circle, and I just saw the bottom of her robe and a foot, right? And I remember I was like, "Ooh, I saw my spirit guide's foot," you know? And so then every week I would go back. So this was I ended up being in the Spiritualist Church for about 8 or 9 years, and I was able to develop my mediumship to a point where I could give messages at the podium every week for the congregation, and it was really a wonderful time in my life. But what happened was, we started to ask to meet our spirit guides, and then when I would go home, I would meditate. And I remember one night I just said, I'm really curious about, who my spirit guides are. I was thinking about it. And then the next morning, as I was waking up, in my mind's eye, I could see them one after another, after another, after another.
Hmm.
And it's like they were introducing themselves to me. I would see their face, and then it would kind of morph into another face and then another face. And I was having all of this energy that was going throughout my body. Now, prior to this was in 2008, in February. In 2007, the end of 2007, I had been in the Spiritualist Church, and we were taking on this guided meditation during the service. And at one point, we were doing this chakra meditation where you go all the way up the chakras. And when we got to the top of the crown chakra, the person who was guiding us on the meditation said, envision any flower on the top of your head opening up, any flower that you like. And then I saw this beautiful flower with all these petals opening up. And then she said, and then ask for anything that you want to know. And I said, I want to know you, God. And this just came from deep within me. Like it was my soul that was calling out. And then, boom, I was being taken on all of these uh, beautiful, like out of body experiences where my walls disappeared and I was out in the cosmos, and my guides were with me. I could feel not just one, but there were others with me and taking me to different places in the cosmos. And I was seeing the portals where the angels were coming out. And I was seeing different scenarios. And at one point, I went to a place where there was an opening in the heavens, and I couldn't go any further because if I went any further, I wouldn't be able to come back. But in this opening in the heavens, it was almost like a window or a doorway, and it wasn't symmetrical either. It was interesting. But behind that were these beautiful flames of light, and I could feel all of this love and bliss and joy. And I was having these unitive experiences where I was merging in with different, I was having unitive experiences of oneness with God, right? So I had all of this love and like infinite love that was permeating through my being. And also, I was merging in with my trees that were on my property. So I knew that they were sentient beings, that they were here. They were very like healing beings, and they were here on my property. They're part of my, also part of my team, because they help to they get rid of any negative energies that are around. And I also had an experience of being one with the ocean. Um, so that was right before I started to meet my spirit guides, which that was a whole other experience that was just incredible. But I was merging in with these different beings, and I was in complete love and bliss and joy. And I was at one point I was morphing in with an elephant being. I was like in front of him, and then I could see his trunk, but his trunk like morphed in with me. So I felt his trunk come out of me. Like it was incredible. And it's hard to put into words because there's so much happening on a spiritual level. And at the time, like I was in two worlds at once. So I was in the earthly realm, but yet I was so much more in the spiritual realm. And that realm feels like, I'm not even going to say 100 times more real than this. It is 1,000 times at least more real than this reality. And so at a certain point, there was a light in my room, and that was really amazing. And then they introduced me to my two main spirit guides. And then I was in front of Mother Mary and Jesus, who were, not because I wasn't a religious person. I was just, I'm a spiritual person, so I'm open to all different understandings. But when I was in front of them, I just automatically, I turned into a child in front of them, a 2-year-old. And then my guides surrounded me, and I was in this round circular, almost like a trampoline type material. And they were all holding the edge of the trampoline in a big circle. And I was this little child bouncing up and down on this trampoline. And they were all looking up at me, beaming all this love at me. And I could see them from, looking down and seeing their faces smiling up at me. And I could feel how much they loved me. And they just loved watching me be my true self, which was my child self. My true essence is a pure little child of, and I trusted them so much. So then after that, there was a being who started working with me telepathically, and he was the only one that I couldn't see, and I felt like he wasn't from here, but I couldn't see him, but I could feel him. And he was very loving and very intense, but very loving. And he knew everything about me, everything. So he started to download all of this information and stuff into my heart. And this went on for hours. And it was like I was going to be tested, so I had to remember, but it wasn't like a test where, like here on the earth plane, you remember, you write stuff down. No, it wasn't like, it was like all being downloaded into my heart. And there was symbols and signs and different understandings. And so I knew I was going to have to remember this, and so this was like an initiation of some kind. And but I remember, after this happened, my family at the time was worried. They were like, what's going on? Da, da, da. Because I was seeing my relatives, my deceased relatives, and I was talking to them. I was talking to my spirit guides. I was seeing the light, and anyway, they really were not able to understand what was happening to me. And so, and I didn't understand, but I just knew it was something really good. And I wasn't afraid of it at all. I was completely blissed out. And so my guides started to tell me that I was experiencing like an initiation, and I was having an awakening. And I found out later on, sometimes they call it a Kundalini awakening. And that's when all the chakras line up and your consciousness just completely opens. And then it's different for everybody, but when the Kundalini completely awakens, that's when you are having a cosmic unitive experience with the divine. And that's what I was having. So I thought I was going to stay that way forever. And, I didn't, but that was my true self. I knew who I truly was. And that was love. I felt all of that love inside of me. But yeah, so I quickly learned that I wasn't able to share these experiences with my family and with people around me because it scared them, and because they didn't really understand it. And so, but my guides told me at that time, they said, a lot of people are going to be waking up. A lot of people are going to be having spiritual experiences over the next, many years. And many people in your part of the world, especially, are going to be told that they're having some kind of a psychotic break, that they need to be put on medication, that they need to see a psychiatrist, or they get ushered into the mental health field where they're, put on all different types of medications. And we want you to see what happens and understand, on a personal level, what people will be going through. So after that, excuse me, I was still going to the spiritualist church, and well, I asked my guides, what am I going to be doing? Am I going to be doing, working with the church? Am I going to help grow the church? And they said, oh, you'll see. And, um, and they just said, you're going to be doing healing work. So they didn't tell me too much because, as my mentor, Dolores Cannon, used to say, you wouldn't give a baby a steak. So they didn't want to tell me too much at the time. But after that, I went on a healing quest and I learned all kinds of healing modalities. And one of them was QHHT, which I love. That is Dolores Cannon's quantum healing hypnosis technique. And I stayed in the spiritualist church and did mediumship and healing for many years. Then in 2015, I left the spiritualist church. And that's when I started to have a lot of experiences with different types of beings. And so they started to come to me. I mean, earlier in my life, I would wake up sometimes and there would be these little beings around my bed. And they weren't like the typical grays, where you see them, those grays with the big eyes. The guys that I saw, they were white. They had big heads and they wore white robes. And I was never really afraid when I saw different types of beings. I was always just like, kind of like, I would wake up, I'd see them, and then I would just fall back to sleep. It never scared me or anything like that. So in my meditation one day, I saw a feline being. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, look, it's not a cat because it's standing, right? And it's tall, it's very tall. But it's got feline features and it's wearing a robe. So I knew it wasn't a cat, and I wasn't afraid of it or anything like that. And then, I had somebody that I knew was a contactee and I was telling him about it. He's like, oh yeah, those are the feline beings. So anyway, over time, a lot of things happened, but I had a cat who passed away because he was sleeping underneath the tree by our front porch where he lived. And the pit bull from a couple houses down got out and came and grabbed him. And he was tiny because he had kidney disease. So it was really sad because he had so many injuries that I ended up having to put him down. And as soon as I did that, it was the hardest thing I ever did, really one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And I really didn't want to do that, but I didn't want him to suffer anymore. And when I did, I felt him go right through my heart. And I could feel how much he loved me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I had no idea. I had no idea how much this cat loved me. I mean, the only thing I could describe it the only way I can compare it to is how much God loved me, which was infinite. But, it was close to that. Let's just put it that way. That's how much my cat loved me. And I adored him too. And so that night when I got home, after I put him down, I went in my room and I sat on my bed. I just leaned back and I closed my eyes and I could see him in my mind's eye as soon as I closed my eyes. And he was on my porch, right? And it was like saying to me, like, don't worry, mommy, I'm still here with you. Don't worry. So I fell asleep and I was waking up in the morning and there he was showing me himself in heaven. And he was running up and down the trees and he was so happy. And now I can hear him, right? Which really blew my mind because he had this little high-pitched voice. He was like, "Mommy, I'm here. I'm happy. Look, don't be sad." I'm like, "Oh my God." But he was showing me where he was in heaven. He jumped into my grandmother's arms. "Don't worry, grandma's here. I'm here with grandma and grandpa." He showed me every single one of my animals that were over there, my dog, my other cats. And I was like, "Oh my God." I was so happy that he was okay and he was happy. And so he actually, and I know this sounds really wild, but he actually was communicating with me. And then he said to me, "Mommy, go down to the crystal shop and get this candle." There was this little light green candle he had that he was showing me. And he goes, "Go down and get this candle." So I thought, oh, okay. Blizzy wants me to, go down to the crystal shop and get this candle. So I will. So there was this little crystal shop a couple towns down from me. The next day, me and my daughter went down there and I was in the shop and this cat candle, a green cat candle, falls on my foot. And it looks like one of those tall Egyptian cat candles, like a tall Egyptian cat where they're long and very slender. And
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of like my boy. His name was Blizzard, but we called him Blizzy. And he was very lean because he was an outdoor boy, so he was always exercising. And I was like, "Oh, look at this! This just fell on my foot." It was the only cat candle in the little crystal shop. So I said to my daughter, "You think we should get it?" And she's like, "Yeah." So anyway, I got that. And then I see the exact little candle, the little light, bright green candle that he showed me in my mind's eye that morning. And I said, "Oh my God, this is the candle he was showing me." And it had attached to it a little prayer of abundance. So I bought a couple of the candles. I got the prayer. I went home. I set it up I had like a little bookshelf, but I had like a little altar top to it that I made. And I made like, it kind of like developed into an altar after that. So I put the cat candle there. I would light the candle and I would say the prayer of abundance, right? So I started to do that at night. And shortly after that, um, I had woken up to Mother Mary in my room. And she was standing there between my bookshelf slash altar and me and my bed. And she was holding my John of God crystal in her hand. And I just knew, like telepathically, what she wanted me to do. I always had my John of God crystal on my nightstand. She wanted me to get up and take my John of God crystal and put it on my altar and have the point of the crystal point towards my crown chakra where I would be laying in my bed. So I did that. So I got up, put my John of God crystal on the altar, and made sure it was pointing exactly where I would be sleeping. I lay back down. I fell asleep. In the morning, as I'm waking up, I open my eyes, and this beautiful white feline being is morphing out of my ceiling right above me. And she's smiling at me. And now I could see her head, right? It's not her whole body, it's her head. And she's smiling at me and beaming all of this love at me. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, thank you, thank you, I'm just thanking her. And I felt this feeling like it was divine feminine energy, similar to it was like Mother Mary energy. So I felt there was a connection somehow between Mother Mary and this beautiful white feline being. And so, uh, I fell back to sleep. And then I woke up in the morning and I took a picture of my altar. And I had this little round chakra crystal in the middle of my altar. And in the picture, I could see the white feline being's face inside that crystal, looking right at me. And I kept looking at it like, wait a minute, is this really what I'm seeing? Because, she just was in my ceiling looking down at me. And now I'm seeing a face of her in the crystal. So I get up and, at that time I was going to acupuncture. So I was very open and I started channeling a collective. So I was very in touch and very open with this collective that I was channeling. And so that night, all of a sudden, because I was channeling, I was having all of these experiences, like a lot of synchronicities and things were happening. And so my heart was just like buzzing. It was like my heart was expanding. So I felt like this buzzing feeling all through my body and my heart. And I couldn't really sleep because of all of this energy. It was very high, beautiful energy that was coming in. And all of a sudden, I feel like I want to go outside and take pictures. I had never felt like that. It's 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly I want to go outside in my yard and take pictures. So I do, right? And now I go to my back patio, and what I noticed on my patio, my daughter had gotten me for Mother's Day this little rubbery cling on. It's like those little clingy things. They're like rubbery. You just stick them on the glass, and it said in all different colors, "Let your light shine." Right. So I go outside. I take pictures from left to right, like 4 or 5 pictures, and I take one video from left all the way to the right. I go back in, go in my room, I look at the pictures, and I see this tube that is like floating in my yard. In between, I had a sassafras tree out there. In between the branches that came out like this, there was this tube that was floating in my yard, and I was like, "The heck is that?" Then I see on the pool deck, I have lattice on the pool deck. There is all of this phenomena that you can see. It's almost like a grayish kind of phenomena that's in the picture. But in that phenomena, I can see all different feline beings. Right now, every morning I'm waking up to different feline beings in my mind's eye, and I'm having these experiences with the feline beings. Now they're showing up in the picture on the side of my deck, on the side of my pool deck. Then to the right, there's this huge column of light that's coming down from the heavens, right? It's coming down from the sky, this huge column of light. And I'm like, "Oh my God, what is that?" That's got to be something. So then I go, as I'm in my room and I'm looking, I look at the video, right? Now that I scanned from left to right. As it's scanning, it goes, all the way to the right. And then right where that portal of light came down, there's this thing that really fast comes out of it. And I slow it down and I'm looking at it frame by frame by frame. And it's this golden disc that shoots out of where the portal of light was. And it goes by so fast. And in one frame, there's this orb of green light right above the disc. And, I screenshot it, right? So now the next day, I go to acupuncture. I'm laying on the table and I'm talking to my guides, right? And I say, "What was that?" I'm talking about the pictures and stuff. And I go, "What was that? What was that golden disc that came out of that portal of light that was shining?" And they go, "Oh, that was us. Did you like that?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I go, "And what about that green orb?" And that was above it. And they go, "Wait for it." And then they said, "It's the white feline being." And I said, "No way." And they go, "Yes." and they go, when you go home, they go enlarge it on your phone. And then because they knew I screenshotted it already. And I said, okay, I will. So as soon as I got home, I went in. I remember I went in the laundry room and I was showing my ex-husband. I'm like, oh my God. I go, they told me the white feline bee, and he had no, he was like not able to deal with any of this, right? So I'm like all excited about it. I pull it up on my phone, I enlarge it, and I can see in that green orb, I could see the shape of the white feline being in that green orb.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. And then I look at the top of the photo and it says 111. So that's another thing. They come in with a lot of synchronicities with the numbers and everything else. And at the time, there were so many synchronicities happening. That was just like one thing after another after another. And I mean, it sounds crazy, right? It really does. It sounds insane, but I mean, I documented everything. I took pictures of everything. I videoed everything. I journaled everything, and at the time I was also, like I said, I was channeling, and I'm a trance channel, so I have to record it in order to remember what is being said. What I've come to understand about my own journey is that I have a connection with them because they are part of my higher self team. And so I've actually had uh, lifetimes as felines, and especially the lion beings. There are lion beings that are beautiful, beautiful
The
beings.
Lyrans.
Um, I'm not sure exactly if they are Lyrans, but they are part of it too. The Lyrans. I don't know. They don't ever really tell me exactly where they're from or anything unless I ask them specifically, but it could be. But I have had lifetimes as them, and you know, I've had experiences of my higher self before incarnating into this life, coming in and like planning what I was going to be going through and some of my challenges too. But they could never really get me to fully feel the weight of the challenges that I would go through because I was in such a high vibration with them because they're just such loving beings. Um, but yeah, I was part of that lineage in other lifetimes. So.
Many people want to connect with their guides, but are unable to do so. Is it because they just don't have the ability, or is it because people aren't really supposed to connect with them because they won't learn things or they won't face the challenges that they're here to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, connecting with my guides didn't stop me from learning what I needed to learn. Because after I connected with my guides, I went through some really, really challenging dark nights of the soul, and I thank God that I, know that I have a team that is with me. But when you're in that really heavy, dense experience in life, because you're in that heaviness, it's harder to connect with them because their vibration is so high, you know and so yeah, I think every one of us can have experiences of connection with, I say, God is our higher self, our connection to source, God, our higher power. And it's not a person, it's that energy of the all, and it's part of every one of us. And so yeah, we are all able to connect in with that, and we are all able to have a deeper understanding of who we are. I think that if somebody really wants to know that and wants to understand that within themselves, um, it's a really good idea to understand why they would want to have that connection. So is it because you want to know, because you want that connection? Or is it because, if somebody wants to, like, I have met people along my journey where they want to connect with spirit, and they don't want to be alone, or they want, they want to have an experience where they see spirit like a person, because they want to have a TV show, and they want to be famous, and they want to make a lot of money, and they want, so it's like coming from more of a place of ego than, that true desire to just know thyself and know God, you know? So I think we are all able to tap into that, but it might not be good for everyone, because what I've seen in my journey is, with that particular person, she wanted that so desperately and she got it, but she ended up attracting an entity that was not of the light. And it actually ended up like attaching to her, and she wasn't even herself after that. She started to say things to people that were really cruel and mean, and I just think it scared the heck out of her. She ended up, leaving and just disappearing, and you know, yeah. But if your intentions are, it's all about intention, I think. You know what I mean? So, when we really, really want that, um, that will happen. Ask and it is given. You know, and so that's my understanding of it.
I'm glad you brought that up because some of the guests will talk about that there are good entities and bad entities out there, and then some are more positive.
Yeah.
So if you want to check in with your guides and other beings, how do you protect yourself
Mm,
from the bad ones?
yeah. So what I always do is I call in God, the light, and I call in my guides, and I protect myself with, either I put a bubble around me, and I'll line it with diamonds or gold, so nothing can penetrate. Or what I'll do is I will put like a tube of light around me, and it goes straight up to source, to God. I fill it all with light, and it goes down into the center of the earth. But I always call in God, I call in the light, and then I call in my team, you know. And Archangel Michael is really good at helping in a pinch. Like if you feel something negative come in, um, he's my go-to guide, my go-to guy, along with Jesus and God and my team. So yeah.
What about ETs? Are there also good and bad ones as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are, just like, it's just like people. There are some people that are really into some negative, dark stuff, and I'm sure there are some ETs that are the same way. I mean, you know, the universe is so vast, right? And also we have this universe inside of us where we can tap into, and that is, infinite also. And so you can't say that everything is all good or all bad. There's so much to it. But I believe, or what I've discovered through my own journey, is that intention is so important with this kind of work. Because when you are, intending to connect in with the light, with God, and for the highest and best good for yourself and for others, that's when, you'll connect in with your lineage of beings that are, of the light. But if you're a person that tends to focus more on the negative and the darker side of life, and you like to really watch, very fearful movies and, horror shows, and you have fun when you're scared, and you think that's entertaining, or you know what I mean, and that's where your focus is, that's you're going to attract. And so everybody's in a different place. My experiences with the different beings that I've met, and I haven't only met feline beings, I've met all different kinds of beings, that I have had lifetimes with. And so they are all heart-centered, loving beings. But I've also had beings that try to interfere. And so they'll see it as like an opportunity to get in and try to mess with people or me. And you just really have to be strong and say, you need to go. Goodbye. And tell them they're not welcome and shut the door, because if they sense you're fearful of them, they feed on fear, and that's what empowers them. But if they know that you're like, you know what's going on, and you're not going to back down to them or be afraid of them, and you tell them to leave, they have to listen and they need to go.
Have you had any type of traditional near-death experience where your body was injured and you left your body and came back? Like, being hit by a car?
No, but I've had a lot of very close calls where I should have died and didn't. I also had an experience as a kid where I don't know if you ever heard of this, but for some reason, the neighborhood kids got wind of this, where you breathe really deep and heavy, and then the kid comes up behind you and does like this. And then please don't ever try this at home, because it is not something I am advocating to do at all. But this is what we did when we were kids one time. And so you breathe really heavy, and then the kid comes up behind you and just like, like, I don't know how to
Like
explain it.
squeezes you or
Yeah,
something?
like squeezes in and up to like under the ribs. And I passed out, and I ended up in another realm where I was out of my body and I was with different beings, and I felt like I was there for like an hour. But when I came out of it, they said I passed out for about 10 seconds.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that happened to me when I was a kid too.
Now, you've had a lot of trauma as a
Yes.
child.
Yes.
And since you have been hypnotized yourself, was all that trauma planned? Did you discover that? Or was it just an accident?
The way that I understand it through my journey, I'll describe a scene that happened to me when I was young, which I think I forgot to mention. When I was a kid, I experienced some severe trauma, and I knew I was going to be hurt really bad, and I had to allow it to happen. I had to, I had to allow it to happen. Um, so it was either um, I had to unlock a door to allow it to happen, or keep the door locked, and then it would be even worse when the door was busted through. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So um, I don't even remember if I opened the door or not, but I think I had to. And I remember like, I think I did open the door. But at that point, I unlocked the door, and then I was out of my body and I was watching from above. Okay. And so any memory I ever have of that trauma, and I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to physically die. I was out of my body watching from above. And I don't have any memory of being in my body when that was happening. And so I didn't even realize that until I was, going to these sharing groups, these different sharing groups, and hearing, different out of body experience. I'm like, oh my God, that's why I always remember that, from that vantage point. And then also, when I was an adult, there was also another life threatening situation where I was being threatened by somebody on a job, and he had a knife, and I was not in my body. Again, I was up above, and I was watching the scenario from above, and there was about 12 people in a circle, and they all saw what was happening, and I could name every single one of those people and where they were, and time slowed down to a halt. It was like everything just slowed down. And so yeah, that was part of it. But what I learned in my quantum healing session, which I also am a practitioner for, I'm a level 2 quantum healing practitioner, but I also had myself, I went to a practitioner myself, and had it done a couple of times. Is that yeah, I did plan my challenges, and I planned my upbringing, my parents, who my siblings, my parents, my greatest challenges. And I also planned my most expansive, loving, connected experiences too before I came here. And those early experiences helped me in so many ways, even though for years, I did not have that way of looking at it. For years, I wondered why, why why did that happen? Why did I have that kind of upbringing? Why didn't I have the perfect family where everyone's, sitting around kumbaya, right? And but now I realize that I chose to have that kind of an upbringing because it would help me to connect in with more of who I truly am. And it would give me opportunities to experience at a young age these pivotal moments where there was an awareness that I am more than just this body, that there's more to life than what I'm being told, you know? And so all of those experiences help me to awaken to to more of who I truly am in this lifetime.
It kind of goes back to an older question of mine. Do you think we're supposed to know this information? Maybe so that now there are hypnotherapists on the planet.
Mhm. Are we supposed to know what information?
Like how our life has been planned
Mhm.
and what had happened to us and the reasons why.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when I started to understand the bigger picture and I started to realize like, oh my God, I planned this. I you know, that it is freeing. It is so freeing because prior to that, I remember just feeling very victimized and feeling like, God, I can't catch a break. Um And once I realized that there is a bigger picture playing out and that, and we all have free will too. So there is certain part of this is destiny, I believe, but there's also a certain part of it is free will. So we have choices that we make along the way. And there have been times in my life where I've chosen to um you know sink into more of that fear and allow that fear to overcome me instead of trusting the guidance that I was given. Like my ego mind would come into it and think, oh wow, this isn't what I've been told. And then that's when a lot of negative things would start to happen. So we do have a lot of choice. A lot of this is choice too. So we can always choose to, you know, not that I'm saying that you can just choose your way out of any bad situation. We all have to go through challenging times in order to grow. But I think over time we can learn that we have more control over the way we choose to you know perceive things than than we did than we realized earlier in life.
You are one of my few guests that got to train directly under Dolores Cannon. Do you have any memories of lessons that always stick with you
Oh my
and
God.
share with us?
Well, Dolores, yeah, she was awesome. And she's just like she is on the videos. She's very approachable, very down to earth. And she really loved her students. She loved teaching. She loved teaching, in person. She wasn't a big fan of technology. She really was afraid of it. So they really had to talk her into doing she had an online class that she gave. And but she liked to be with her students so her students could ask her directly the questions. Um, yeah, I just remember her being really, really approachable and really just like a kind and matter of fact kind of person. But I do remember her saying, that you wouldn't give a baby a steak. And because one of the things that she would, tell us is that when people are tapping into their higher self, which you do in a quantum healing session, they are never going to give you um, too much information. they're not going to give you more than you can handle. So people sometimes have a lot of fear that they're going to be shown all this stuff and they're not going to be able to handle it, or they're going to be, dragged through the misery of a death in a past life. And they don't want, yes, no, you don't go through that again. And you always make sure that you say, you can watch as an observer different aspects of whatever it is your experiences, but your higher self, your team, will never give you more than what you can handle. And so her saying was, you wouldn't give a baby a steak. And so that's when I had that experience with my guides. They didn't want to show me too much out into the future, because at the time I had a lot of fear of public speaking. So they they told me, they go, you're gonna be speaking. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, humana. And they said, no, no, don't worry. Grandpa's gonna help you with that. Don't worry. But they don't want to tell you too much about things that maybe you're not ready for in that moment. So I had to overcome a lot of things during my journey. And so that's why they're not going to give you too much. And also, if they told me that I was going to be, meeting ETs and, having groups of people that I work with, which I do on a regular basis. I have my monthly groups, and I'm very involved with sharing groups, and I have speakers that come on and talk about their experiences. And so at that time, when I was asking them, what am I going to be doing? They were not going to tell me all that. They just said, you'll see, just a little bit. Just tell me a little bit.
How many guides do most people have?
Oh, that is a really hard question. I think, I have been shown, if we had any idea of how many beings we actually have that want to help us and work with us, we would be blown away. Like, you could sit, did you ever go to the ocean and just sit at the edge of the ocean and look out and see how vast it is?
Yeah.
It would fill up that whole scene of beings that we are connected to and that love us and that want so much to help us, you know. I know in my lifetime, because I'm a medium, so I have, all the different clairs, but I have seen so many different spirit guides. There's so many different beings, and different beings will come in at different times, or different guides will come in at different times of our life. But I think we have main guides that work with us more closely, and then we have guides that will come in at different times, depending upon what we're going through and what we need. So when I was going through, a divorce, and it was a very challenging time for me. Um, and I would be waking up in the morning and I would be seeing somebody who also in life went through a very challenging divorce, where her, children, were involved, and she was worried about that. It was just all this stuff. And her life, like, there was a lot of parallels to her life and my life. And so at that time, I was waking up, not every day, but, at times I would wake up to her, and I knew she was there to support me, and that she was helping me in some way, so that I knew I wasn't alone.
For those that don't know much about QHHT, what is the difference between that technique versus others?
QHHT is it's kind of like hypnosis on steroids in a way, because I really shouldn't compare it to a drug, but it's really multifaceted. So it's not just dealing with past lives, like a past life regression, which is wonderful. Past life regressions are wonderful. And then you have certain techniques that deal with in between life states. So that it's I forget the name of it, but it's focused primarily on that, you know, where we're planning our lives before we come here. I think it was Michael Newton who did that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. QHHT is more of it is a healing modality, but not only are you being healed, right? physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're also, because what happens in a session is you come in and you bring a list of questions that you have for your higher self. And then through the hypnosis process, you get in touch with your higher self through hypnosis, and you'll start seeing scenes. Either you'll see past life scenes, this lifetime scenes, you'll see in between life scenes, and sometimes people will go into future life scenes. Whatever it is that is for your highest and best intention, and whatever your higher wisdom knows will be helpful and beneficial to you in this lifetime at this moment, that is what you will experience.
You said future life scenes?
Yes. Yep. It can be that too.
Hmm.
So people will have experiences and they'll be able to talk about, through the hypnosis process, what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, what they're hearing, what they're feeling. And then after the hypnosis, um, you'll the 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 hypnotist will then ask your higher self if it could ask questions that the client has, and the higher self has to say yes 3 different times, right? So like you ask it 3 different times, and then you go over the list of questions that the person had. So the person had brought in a list of questions they had for themselves, their higher self. And you go through those questions, and the person is still under hypnosis, but they're connected in with their higher self. So there is a higher wisdom that is speaking through the client. And that higher wisdom has the bigger picture, so can explain why certain things happened, or, each question that the person has. And then at the end, when the questions are over, you ask the higher self to do a healing. And the higher self always says yes, because the higher self loves to heal. And so then there's an energetic healing that happens through the body, and the soul and um the cellular memories and everything of the person. So there's all of this energy that's going through the person. So it's a multifaceted healing modality, and it's just amazing. Yeah, it's really amazing.
Well, since you've been both the therapist and the client, how do you know when you're lying there that you're just not imagining all this stuff, like making it up?
Well, I tell people a lot of it is trust. Most of it is trust. So if you're the kind of person that is very left-brained and very analytical, and you have to know everything, and how it all works and why, and, or you're questioning everything, you're going to have a harder time than somebody that is just going to go with the flow, be open to the experience, and trust what they get. And I tell people it's just kind of like, you know, it's not going to be this earth-shattering thing. I think a lot of people get in their head that they're going to have this earth-shattering experience, or it's not going to be valid. And so, we're in that state every day of the hypnagogic state, where we're just kind of daydreaming, or when we're just about to fall asleep, we're in that very, very heavy, almost trance-like state, or in the mornings when we're just about to wake up. And we do that different times during the day when we're, thinking about something or imagining something. So um, that's kind of what it's like, when you're in that state. And so some people will have experiences of things that are playing out in this lifetime, but they expect they're going to have a past life memory, or they really want to have an ET experience. They come in with, a certain expectation, but then they'll have other experiences that their higher wisdom knows they need. And sometimes they may be disappointed, but I always say you get exactly what is for your highest and best good. And so if you're seeing scenes from this lifetime, it's important for you to know that at this time. And it has everything to do with the intentions for your session, for coming, for whatever intentions you have for your session, and the questions that you have going in.
Do
So,
most clients come to you with problems that they're wanting to sort out?
everybody everyone has problems. There's nobody on the planet that doesn't have something that they are dealing with.
Right.
People come because they're curious, they've heard about it, and they want to have an experience. Other people come because they really have some severe things going on, yeah, some people have a lot of you know, one lady had a lot of anxiety, and there's all different across the spectrum, and then I've had other people where um they really want to have a session, but they're very much addicted to something, and so you can't really do a session until they've gotten that out of their system, because it could interfere with them being able to have a real good direct connection, you know.
Have you had ET contact during the day, face to face with any beings?
Face to face. Well, I mean, yes, I've had sightings during the day where I've seen ships. I've had in the morning, like I said, when I woke up and I saw that being morphing out of my ceiling, my eyes were open. So to me, that is a face to face. Um, they, they come in all different ways, and they are really interesting the way they can show themselves to us. So things that you would never expect to happen. So I'll just give an example. So I'm channeling in the morning. Sometimes I'll channel, and then I'll record it, and I'll see different beings in the that'll kind of like just pop into my awareness as I'm channeling. And then I'll go in and use the bathroom, and on the rug of my bathroom is the face that I just saw in my mind's eye as I was channeling. I cannot tell you how many times that has happened to me. Or I'm waking up and I see them. Or I just had an experience with, you know, um, I was having an experience with different beings, um, showing me different ones, and they would appear on my rug. Or I would see them in my camera, they would show up in my camera in some way. So they're very interesting the way they can come through. One morning I was waking up and I saw these sticks on the ground in my mind, my eyes closed. And that's a really good time to connect, by the way, is in the morning before you open your eyes. Um, you can get a lot of connection with God, your higher self, your team at that time. And if you ask questions, and just stay in that very relaxed state, don't try, because once you try, it's not going to happen. You just have to relax and just stay in that state and let go. And if you find yourself trying, just let it go. You can ask a question, and then you'll see a symbol, word, a sentence. You'll see a you know, sometimes you see beings, but that is a beautiful, beautiful, magical time to connect, and that is part of the hypnagogic state. Um, and that's kind of why I knew Dolores was onto something when I heard about her hypnosis technique, because I was doing that in the mornings. I was just staying in that beautiful state, and I was connecting in with God, my team, and I was getting all kinds of information that was true. So I knew when I heard about Dolores and they said, oh, she works in the hypnagogic state where people connect to their higher self. I was like, I have to learn that, because she's working with truth. And so one morning I was waking up and I was seeing these sticks on the ground, almost like different size sticks, but they were trying to spell something out. It looked like almost an alphabet in sticks. And I was like, what is going on? And I said, who is this? I don't know what you're trying to say to me. Who is this? And then next thing I see one Sasquatch after another, after another, after another. And they were all different sizes, all different color. Like, there was a white one there was a brown one, there was a black one, but they were all heights, all different sizes. And I'm like, oh my God. And then they start to explain to me that they are part of my lineage, that I was a Sasquatch being. And and I was like, oh, really? And they said yes. And they said they were starting to come to people here on Earth that have a connection to them. They're very psychic, they're very loving. And so I just said, oh, I was a Sasquatch, huh? And they said, yeah. And then they showed me who my partner was in my Sasquatch life. They showed me what I looked like as a Sasquatch, which really I was blown away.
Wow.
But then they showed me my Sasquatch baby. And this little Sasquatch was in my arms, and she was a blonde little Sasquatch baby. And I'm holding her and I'm looking down at her, right? And I'm like, oh my God. And I see her face kind of morph into almost like human, but still Sasquatch looking. And I'm just like blown away. So I get up that morning and I go to this spiritualist, or not a spiritualist church. It was a like a fellowship. I had left the spiritualist church at that time. And um, after the service was over, people were, having cake and coffee or whatever. And I was getting ready to leave, but I saw this lady standing there and I just felt very drawn to her. And so I walk over to her and I said, do I know you? And she turned around and it was the same exact face that little baby Sasquatch was, that I was holding in my arms. And I just went back like, oh my God, that was the same day that I woke up to them. Um, so they have a way of showing us, right? Then later, a couple weeks after that, I started getting, I had a lot of experiences with them, but I started getting in my head, like home goods. I don't know if you have home goods by you, but it's
Yeah,
a
we do.
store. But yeah. So home goods popping in my head, home goods, home goods. I'm like, okay, you want me to go to Home Goods, I don't need anything at Home Goods. I already have everything. I don't need any more crystals, blah, blah, blah. So, so I'm like, which Home Goods you want me to go to? Right. Because we have two near us. So they show me the one. So I get in my car, I go to Home Goods. I'm walking around the store and I'm like, all right, guys, I don't need anything here. What are you trying to show me? I hear like telepathically in my head, go to the back of the store, right? So I go walk to the back of the store, and oh my God, there's an 8-foot tall resin statue of a Sasquatch
Wow.
for $2,000.
Wow.
So I stood there and I'm laughing, and I'm like, oh, I'm like laughing in my head, and I'm like, you guys are so funny. I go, I'm not buying that. I said, I am not buying that, but this is really fun. And thank you for this experience. So I stood there and I'm like, could you take my picture next to the Sasquatch? So of course they took my picture, and then I took pictures of other people, and it was a fun experience. So now I'm like, okay, so I'm shopping. I'm like looking around before I go to leave, and I'm laughing to myself, and I'm just like, you guys are funny. So I see this um, Himalayan salt lamp crystal, and it's big. It's not like the normal little ones, like on a nightstand. I mean, it's a big one. It's probably
Mhm.
about 18 inches, 16 inches tall, and about 7 or 8 inches wide. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, that would be really great next to my big screen TV, because supposedly it gets rid of like negative ions and stuff. So I said that would be perfect next to my big screen TV. So, and it's a really good price because it's at Home Goods, right? So I buy it. I take it home. I plug it in. I sit down on my chair. I look over at it, and I cannot believe what I'm seeing. There's a Sasquatch being down the whole front of that crystal lamp. And it is a salmon color. And that is the color crafts that they were coming over my house one day. There was like 30 of them that I have on film, where they were just flying over my house one after another after another. So anyway, I have this salt lamp crystal that is salmon, right? Salmon color for them. And there's a Sasquatch being, and he looks like a male Sasquatch, like the one I saw in Home Goods. He's got the big oblong head. You could see his muscular arm. He's got a big chest, like a big barrel chest, and he looks like he's walking, and his one arm is bent, right? And then the other arm looks like it's, sticking straight down, almost like he's holding somebody's hand. And so, yeah, so that was part of the phenomena that they that they brought through to me the same day that I went to the store and I saw the Sasquatch being, or not being, but the resin statue.
Well, earlier you mentioned that you have meetup groups or something on Facebook where you guys get together. If people
Yeah.
want to join those groups, how do they do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have three different groups. The first one is called Safe Space Sharing Group, and that's on the first the first Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I do have a registration or a link for that. Will you be putting that up on the YouTube?
Sure, I can just put links to your Facebook page or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah, I have a Bitly account where it lists all of my groups,
Okay.
and people can just register for them and get the Zoom link and come on in because we have a beautiful group of people. So the first Tuesday of the month is Safe Space Sharing Group, where we meet for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and um, we share our experiences of all different kinds of anything having to do with spiritually transformative experiences, NDEs, OBEs, mediumship channeling, UFO, ET, the sky is the limit. And that one is not recorded. But then the second Tuesday of the month, I have UFO ET experiencers. And that one, I usually have a speaker that comes in and they'll share their story about, their contact story. And then we have time for questions and answers and insights from the people in the Zoom room. And that's really nice. And then on the fourth Tuesday of the month, I have spiritual experiencers. And that's where we usually have a speaker that comes in and shares. And then we have time for questions, answers, and insights. But yeah, it's really nice. It's a nice way to get together and talk about these experiences without feeling judged and without feeling like people are looking at you like you are crazy. And a lot of people have gone through so much that a lot of people that are experiencers have gone through a lot of isolation in their life because people don't really have the understanding and awareness that these are true human experiences and they are not something that needs to be medicated or, you know, it's not a psychotic experience or some kind of a mental illness. So I think little by little, word is getting out about these kind of experiences and that they are real and valid. Another organization I'm very involved in is IANS, which is International Association for Near-Death Studies. And this year I'm going to be a speaker on a panel. It's the first time they're ever bringing up the UFO ET
That's great.
NDE connection.
Mm.
And so, but they do also have sharing groups and people that want to go, talk in their sharing groups. They have sharing groups and they're open to all these kind of experiences too. And we just started a group called UFO ET NDE, and that's on the first Wednesday of the month through IANS. And then there's another organization I'm very involved in, and it's called Spiritual Awakenings International. And they also have sharing circles on the first Saturday of the month. So, there's a lot of support out there in groups, and they're not really run like support groups. They're more like they're called sharing groups because we're not there to give advice or anything, but we're talking from our own unique experiences and what has helped for us or what we've gone through. So it's really nice and it's non-judgmental and it's a beautiful group of people.
Now, aren't you writing a chapter for a book coming out?
Oh, yes. Yes. Actually, I just submitted my chapter for Ray Hernandez has compiled a huge amount of work in this area. And so he put out a book back in 2017 called Beyond UFOs, and it's an 800-page large print book. Don't get scared of the 800 pages because it's large print. But he compiled data for the very first research study that was ever done on contactees, on UFO people that have experienced UFOs and ETs. And he put out surveys for over 4,300 people, and I was one of them that took the surveys. And he compiled all kinds of data. And what we've been shown isn't exactly the truth. There's been a lot of fear pumped into us, all over the world about these beings, and they are really for the most part, loving, beautiful, healing beings. But yeah, his new book is coming out. It's called A Greater Reality, and it's going to be volume 4, and that will come out in October. But he's got a body of work now called A Greater Reality, volume 1, 2, and 3. And he also has a book called The Mind of God, which is a shorter book. But yeah, he's got a lot of people that, are coming together now that are actually very highly educated, people that have, PhDs in physics and all different kinds of highly educated people that are now coming together and talking about these experiences because, back in the day they were afraid, which I don't blame them because they could end up losing their jobs and their credibility. But now they are openly coming out and sharing about these experiences. So, yeah, his name is Ray Hernandez, and his website is A Greater Reality. And he offers these books, a lot of them for free online, PDF. But if you want to have the hard book, you can order it through that website or Amazon too.
Catherine, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Oh, wow. So many things I could think of, but the first thing that came to me was that, if you're somebody that is really wanting to have, more experiences or connections with your higher self, with your team, with God, I would say keep at it. Don't give up because you know, I I heard one time it's kind of like a little kid, right? Who's going to get the attention? Is it the kid that's just like, quietly in the corner reading a book, or, says something and then turns away and, is on to something else? Or is the kid that's constantly like tugging at the parent, you know, mom, 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 dad, 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 the I guess what I'm trying to say, and that makes sense to me, is to really keep at it. And not that I'm saying to try so hard, but just don't give up. Keep asking to connect, asking to know more. I find it really helpful when I want to know about something, or I need more information or something to be revealed to me, to ask before I go to sleep. And then I'll ask for something to show up in a dream, and I'll ask for me to remember it. Also, in the mornings when I'm, just waking up, keeping my eyes closed, we can all do that and just tap in with that energy. Meditation is really, I think, very important because, and guided meditations are really a lot. For me, they were a lot easier than just going into the silence at first because it gave me a focus. So any kind of guided meditation, but it's all about intention and wanting, wanting that connection. And we all have that. We all have these abilities. It's just that we've been programmed to believe that they're crazy or that they're not valid, but we can tap back into those abilities as adults. And there's nothing stopping us from doing that but ourselves.
Catherine, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jeff. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate being here.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.